MAGA cultist Kari Lake and a number of Arizona Republicans are scrambling to distance themselves from a draconian state Supreme Court ruling which effectively bans abortion. Unfortunately for them, CNN reporter Kaitlan Collins brought the receipts and wielded them to devastating effect, and it's glorious. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bell before you go. I'd greatly appreciate it. All right, friends, we got a couple of clips to look at here. But again, as a reminder, here's the situation. So Donald Trump recently said, hey, despite the fact that I constantly brag about killing Roe v. Wade by appointing 3 conservative Supreme Court justices, and despite constantly flirting with a national abortion ban, despite so many in my party and so many religious zealots which back my party declaring that they want a national abortion ban, I'm just going to leave it to the states. And then the next day, after that unconvincing lie, the Arizona Supreme Court made this ruling. They resurrected an 1864 draconian law which bans abortion effectively, except for in instances when the mother's life is threatened. Okay, it's bad news for Arizona, particularly because it's such a purple state. And it will have devastating consequences in the election because, as we know, abortion and just questions about choice have been devastating electorally for Republicans, particularly in the aftermath of the July 2022 Dobbs decision, which repealed Roe v. Wade and the 50-year effective super precedent that it carried. Now, after that, Kari Lake, MAGA cultist who ran for governor and she lost to Katie Hobbs, and now she's running to replace independent Senator Kyrsten Sinema. She is scrambling to distance herself from a bunch of weird, very pro-forced birth comments that she has previously made. But again, Kaitlan Collins brought the receipts, and this is just peak journalism from a network which very often doesn't engage in it. So we're going to play this clip and we'll unpack it together.
That includes Republican Senate candidate and a contender to be Donald Trump's vice president if he's the president and the Republican nominee, Kari Lake. She rushed out a statement and it reads, in quote, in part, and I'm quoting her now, I oppose today's ruling. But that statement requires a lot of context, given it wasn't that long ago that she said this about the very law that is set to go into effect.
We have a great law on the books right now. If that happens, we will be a state where we will not be taking the lives of our unborn anymore.
I'm incredibly thrilled that we are going to have a great law that's already on the books. I believe it's ARS 133603. So it will prohibit abortion in Arizona except to save the life of a mother. And I think we're going to be paving the way and setting course for other states to follow.
She even cited exactly which law it was. Lake, though, of course, is far from being the only Arizona Republican who is trying to distance themselves from today's ruling. Republican Congressman Juan Ciscomani has gone from saying, quote, I applaud the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade, to calling today's ruling a disaster for women. Of course, the overturning of Roe v. Wade paved the way for what happened today. At the state level, Republican State Representative Matt Gress says today's, quote, ruling cannot stand. But it was just last year that he was pushing a bill to declare fetuses as people, which obviously would make abortion illegal. Here's also something that's interesting in light of today's decision. Arizona's former Republican governor, Doug Ducey, added 2 seats in a successful effort to stack the state's Supreme Court. In all, he appointed 5 of the 7 justices who ruled today. Doug Ducey said what happened today is not his preferred outcome. But remember this, the 15-week law that he did sign, which he said today he believed would be a better option, included this specific language, not to repeal, by implication or otherwise, the very 1864 law that will soon go into effect. There's a simple reason that so many Republicans are racing to revise their previous positions, the state's 11 electoral votes, a number that could very well decide who the next president will be.
And this is a toxic issue for Republicans, and they know it. We did a video. We will continue to do videos because it's true, and it's also fun to delight in their despair, which is that they fear the consequence of the very ideology that they have relentlessly pursued. And that it was peak journalism from Kaitlan Collins. She didn't both sides the issue. She didn't mince words. She exposed the Republicans' lies for exactly what they are. We have absolutely no reason, none, and every reason not to give that party the benefit of the doubt. We have no reason to take Republicans at face value, especially when they're contradicted by previous statements and actions. Kari Lake, the Arizona Republicans that Kaitlan Collins mentioned, Donald Trump on a national level, Mike Johnson on a national level, Lindsey Graham on a national level, all these people would gleefully impose a national abortion ban based on things they've said and done in the past. And the result of this ruling by the Arizona Supreme Court, they should be held morally and politically accountable for the consequences of that, because they not only paved the road, they put up a velvet rope and lifted it and ushered it right on in. It's their fault, and they should accrue a political consequence to it. Speaking of, Ruben Gallego, who is Kari Lake's opponent, he is a Democrat, the Democratic candidate running to replace Kyrsten Sinema against Kari Lake. He was interviewed on MSNBC by Lawrence O'Donnell, and this is what he had to say very bluntly about Kari Lake's attempts again to engage in revisionist history.
Republican senator from Arizona, Kari Lake, if she were to be a Republican senator, would be voting for any Republican-nominated judges. If Donald Trump were back in the White House, she'd be voting for every one of those judges who has created this situation in Arizona tonight.
Absolutely. Judges. But we're not even talking just judges. What about what happens with abortion pills? She's clearly stated, and she hasn't changed her position, that she wants to outright ban abortion pills. She has lied. She has lied to the women of Arizona. She's going to continue to lie because all she cares about is power. It doesn't matter what she has to say. It doesn't matter who she has to lie to. If she has to throw women's health under the bus, she will do it, and she will lie. And once she gets in, she will do whatever she can to continue her radical extremist agenda.
Absolutely. And again, we have no reason to believe otherwise. The fact that she is occasionally moderating her rhetoric now is because she finds herself in the same damn predicament that any modern Republican does. They have to go to the far right. They have to appeal to their far right fringe to secure the nomination. They have to bend the knee and kiss the ring to Donald Trump. They have to be as crazy as possible. But that's usually insufficient, particularly in a purple state, to win the general election, because Republicans are just generally less popular. And so then they have to try to moderate. They have to basically cover twice the distance. And it's so inauthentic. Kari Lake is an extremist. She has dedicated years of her life to trying to persuade us that she is an extremist. And so she should be, again, somebody held politically accountable as an extremist, because that's what she's said and done. She's engaged in extremism. Newsweek has a good op-ed about this, about how Kari Lake faces disaster in Arizona as a result of this ruling. Paul Benz, Senior Vice President of Research and Strategy at Arizona-based public affairs firm High Ground, told Newsweek that Lake's response just shows just how big of a, quote, disaster Tuesday's rulings will be for Republicans. Kari Lake is going to have a difficult line to walk, because electorally it's a difficult position for her to be in. Her most conservative base, her hardcore right base, will be celebrating today's decision. And now that this is the playing field, any effort to reinstate abortion is going to be construed as a pro-choice or construed as in favor of abortion. Because again, those are the stakes. Those are the terms. That's how they pitched it. They're being hoisted by their own petard. Navigating this issue, quote, is going to be very challenging moving forward for Kari Lake or any of the other Republican candidates. Political consultant Jay Townsend agreed, saying either way, Kari Lake is damaged by what Arizona did. And by the way, according to the polling, at least the most recent polling I've seen, Kari Lake is trailing Ruben Gallego by at least 4 points. So it's very likely that, at least based on current trajectory, that Ruben Gallego will replace Kyrsten Sinema, who is choosing not to run for re-election. She is stepping down from her post. That's really good news, because as a reminder, in order for us to do anything meaningful, we have to have the White House and both chambers of Congress, the Senate and the House, okay? And right now, we effectively have to defend all of our incumbent seats that are up for re-election. That includes very tough races: Sherrod Brown in Ohio, John Tester in Montana. And because Sinema, she's independent and she's a pain in the ass very often, but she caucuses with Democrats more often than not. And so the fact that she's not seeking re-election, which makes sense because everybody in Arizona hated her anyway because she was a phony, that's a seat we have to win. We have no margin for error. And so it's important that Gallego defeat Lake, replace Sinema, and that we win every other possible election. Hopefully we can even flip Texas away from Ted Cruz. But folks, this is vital. This is so vital. It's not enough simply to reelect President Biden. We have to take back the House. We have to keep the Senate. And if not, there's no telling what radical extremists like Kari Lake and the rest of her party will do if they get their hands on the levers of power. Let me know what you think in the comments.